Mason Green here, talking about the integrated, realized, illuminated self. Today, I'm here on the front porch of the Rockefeller House on Jeckyl Island in Georgia. This is the site of one of the most pivotal events in recent world history. Back in November of 1910, some of the most important financial men of that time gathered here to draft up the Federal Reserve Bank. And interestingly enough, it's neither federal, it has no reserves, and it's not a bank. Today, it acts as a beautiful hotel which welcomes dignitaries and guests, and is just a real shining example of preservation at its best. Come on, let's go take a look. Come on in, I'm going to show you a great picture. And here's a photo of Ben Bernanke and Alan Greenspan in the hallway. We're now in that hallway. This was originally the cards and billiard rooms. It's now called the Federal Reserve Room, where they have meetings, and this is where it all went down. In 1910, here at Jeckyl Island, these were 6 of the men at that meeting. And as a gift, the Federal Reserve presented the hotel with these 2 plaques. This is the seal, the Federal Reserve seal. And then over here is a testimonial. One of the men that was here. It's great to read about stuff on the internet and in books, but it's another thing to actually be in the actual place that things went down. And I know you can't be here, but I'm here now, so I'm going to read it to you. It's called the First Name Club. At the train in New York, we were told to leave our last names behind us. We were told further that we should avoid dining together on the night of our departure. We were instructed to come one at a time and as unobtrusively as possible to the railroad terminal on the New Jersey littoral of the Hudson, where Senator Aldrich's private car would be in readiness, attached to the rear end of a train for the South. Congress, after 1907, had realized that something had to be done to strengthen our banking system. Senator Aldrich was on the whole the best informed and the most dominant man in Congress on financial measures. He became increasingly concerned about the report he must write on behalf of the Joint Monetary Commission. Likewise, there ought to be, he knew, a bill to present to the new Congress, and none had to be drafted. This was how it happened that a group of us went with him to the Jeckyl Island Club on the coast of Georgia. It would have been fatal to Senator Aldrich's plan to have it known that he was calling on anybody from Wall Street to help him in preparing this report. When I came to that car, the blinds were down and only slender threads of amber light showed the shape of the windows. Once aboard the private car, we began to observe the taboo that had been fixed on last names. We proceeded, in the rear room of that private car, to get to work as soon as the train was moving. That first discussion of the banking structure and of what ought to be done about it produced scraps of ideas as formless as the contents of a rag bag. Every one had some little piece of a project to throw on the table for discussion, and everyone's pet scheme encountered some other fellow's objection. Then, on to Jeckyl. We were taken by boat from the mainland to Jeckyl Island, and for a week or 10 days were completely secluded. We put in the most intense period of work that I have ever had. Sometimes Davison and Strong would be up at daybreak to get a horseback ride or a swim before breakfast. But right after breakfast, the six of us would gather around the table and resume where our discussion had ended the previous midnight. We lived during those days on Jeckyl Island at the highest pitch of intellectual awareness that I have ever experienced. It was entirely thrilling. Now, although the Aldrich Federal Reserve Plan was defeated when it bore the name of Aldrich, nevertheless its essential points were all contained in the plan that finally was adopted. There can be no question about it. Aldrich undoubtedly laid the essential, fundamental lines which finally took the form of the Federal Reserve Law 3 years later. From Farm Boy to Financier by Frank A. Vanderlip. D. Appleton, Century Company, New York, 1935. Now let's go across the room and I'll show you the 6 men that drafted the Aldrich Plan, which went on to become the Federal Reserve Plan. They were A. Platt Andrew, Senator Nelson W. Aldrich, Henry P. Davison, Benjamin Strong, Frank A. Vanderlip, and Paul Warburg. These were the 6 men from the city of the banking and financial world in 1910. It's important to note also that none of these men were actual members here at Jeckyl Island or at the Jeckyl Island Club. They were all merely guests of the J.P. Morgan family. Let's go outside. Some people may say this was a diabolical dismantling of the Constitution. Others, on the other hand, may say these were just some really astute businessmen taking care of business the best way they knew how. Rather than judge if it was a good thing or a bad thing, it's important to know that we don't know what the end of the story is. So one thing I've taken away from it personally is these men were the masters of their domain. I want you, and I encourage you, to be the master of your domain. This is Mason Green from Jeckyl Island, wishing you a healthy body, a happy spirit, and an astute mind.